An ABC News exclusive. It's the first interview with an American businessman immediately after his release from 4 months in jail on the Caribbean island of Aruba, where he was suspected of, although never charged with, the murder of his traveling companion. She was Robyn Gardner, a 35-year-old Maryland woman now presumed dead. He is Giordano, answering some questions and raising others. ABC's Matt Gutman has been covering the story from the start. And here he is now.
After 116 days in a fetid Aruban prison, Giordano, arrested for the suspected murder of Robyn Gardner, back on U.S. soil.
Did you ever think this would come? All those nights in prison?
No. I'd accepted the fact that they were going to keep me from my kids forever.
In New York, an onslaught of reporters.
What do you say to all the people that think you're guilty?
And soon, this emotional reunion with his 3 teenage sons.
And this is an opportunity just to ask you some questions.
Who flanked him along with his attorney, Jose Baez, in his first interview with Good Morning America's Robin Roberts. But right from the start,
what happened August 2nd, that day with Robyn Gardner?
He seemed to raise as many questions as he answered.
I've answered that question 50, 60 times. I'm not prepared to, at this point, go from the moment of that day to the end of the day.
That day, August 2nd, Giordano says he went snorkeling with his travel companion and lover, Robyn Gardner, at this idyllic beach.
We were 100 yards from a scuba diving store, not a remote location, okay? We were in view of other people at Baby Beach.
Earlier, they were seen at this restaurant where a waitress told ABC News Gardner seemed woozy. Giordano, she said, was acting strangely. They strolled to the beach to snorkel, he says. The next we see of him, this surveillance video, he's loping through the restaurant, searching for help. Investigators told ABC News he showed a marked lack of urgency for a man who just lost his lover. All along, he's claimed a storm kicked up, that he had to swim for his life. When he looked back for Gardner, she was gone.
So when I came out of the water, I was exhausted. I had my tennis shoes on when we went in the water, and when I came back, I was swimming back. It was exhausted when I got back to shore. And then I had to run all the way around. Here was the thing. It's like running a marathon and you come around the last corner and you're expecting a whole crew of people yelling for you, and there's nobody there. You're not going to go high-five the air.
Police found so much of his behavior suspicious. Without a body or a murder weapon, they had no hard evidence. But they believed they did have a possible motive. Of particular interest, a $1.5 million travel insurance policy Giordano purchased for Gardner, naming himself the beneficiary just the day before they traveled.
I've purchased it many times before. It's cancellation insurance. It's travel insurance.
Just 2 days after she disappeared, he called 4 times. One American Express agent became so alarmed, he called the police and the FBI, saying, quote, Giordano seemed excited, like he was about to win something. The day after he made those calls, police moved in.
So I'm running in the Aruban airport. I go through customs, blah, 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 check in my bag, and the gate is open. And then the head of detectives walks up to me and says, we're arresting you for the murder of Robyn Gardner.
So what are his reasons for taking out that $1.5 million travel insurance policy?
I have a house, a large house, and a lot of payments. And if I go traveling and I disappear, I want them to be covered. Okay? So I maxed out on everything. Medical, I think, was $150,000 or whatever. But that's automatic. I can't unselect Robyn. Okay? And when it came down to the accident insurance, you can't unselect her. Okay? So when I selected that, I was selecting it for me, and thus she got the same thing.
So she's missing, and 2 days later, you're inquiring about, you're not trying to collect, but you're inquiring. Why would you do that and she's still missing?
It's exactly right. Okay, so I mean, that's a wonderful question, and I understand that. My lawyer, at the time, not this man here, Michael Lopez, okay, he told me, he said, you need to call insurance immediately because these helicopters, the scuba divers that were going to go into water, which they didn't go in till days later, he said they might send you an invoice.
But a 4-month-long investigation by Aruban police, which cost the tiny island more than the entire budget of its justice ministry, found not a shred of evidence. No body, no murder weapon, and no convincing motive.
What Mr. Giordano has told us in the investigation is not true. His description of the situation is not in accordance with reality. We know that that day there was virtually no wind, there were no waves, and the current was practically nil.
Giordano wouldn't talk about the weather or anything else that evening. He would also only mention Robyn Gardner by name a few times.
The question on everyone's mind, they want to know if you had anything to do.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In my mind,
do you feel responsible at all?
I
mean, if you're out
feel
on the
as
ocean
if a person that I cared about, okay, a companion. If I was traveling with you or you, has disappeared on my watch. It will weigh heavily on me for a very long time.
Gardner's family today had no comment, but in a statement earlier this week said, "Our family is very disappointed that even after all this time, we are no closer to finding out what happened to our Robyn." We may never know what happened to Robyn Gardner that day and what Gary Giordano knows, or if he had anything to do with it. And Giordano, back home with his sons,
You guys have gotten taller.
says he wishes none of this had ever happened.
Sure.
Would you have done anything differently?
Absolutely. That's a silly question. I mean, that's really, of course. There's a missing person. Would I do something different? Yeah, I wouldn't have come.
Now that Giordano has finally left Aruba, it is unlikely he will ever go back, unless investigators somehow find that piece of hard evidence that has eluded them all these months, enough evidence to charge him with the murder of Robyn Gardner. For Nightline, I'm Matt Gutman in New York.